Meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee of the Lawrence City Council. My name is Dave Abdu. I am the council from District D, and at this time I'm joined by my colleague from District District D, Giovanni Rodriguez, the district councilor, as well as Councilor at Large Pavel Payano. With that, I would read the legal notice that enables us to meet remotely this evening, Monday, June 21st, 2021. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 21, this meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure the public can adequately access these proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons that would like to listen or view this meeting while in progress may do so at the following locations that are articulated in our agenda, and they can also be found on the Lawrence City Council page of the city website. We're available on Channel 22 on Xfinity, Channel 40 on FiOS, as well as our Facebook page and our YouTube page that are once again available at the City Council landing page. With that, I would ask that we say the Pledge of Allegiance before we call this meeting to order. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. I want to thank Maria Halloran, our clerk this evening, and John Mejia, our technician that makes the broadcast possible. With that, I would draw your attention to, well, let me start with this. We have five new agenda items this evening. We will not be joined by our Chief Administrative and Financial Officer this evening, who has suffered loss in his family and will be unable to join us this evening. He will be, he will be replaced, if you will, by Ramona Sabalos, and she is here this evening to help us get through these agenda items. I would note, and we can take it up when we get there, we'll take things in sequential order, but item 11921 is a proposed 5-year financial forecast, user's guide and assumptions. And item number 12021, which is the SEIU Local 888 Carpenters and Trade Union Collective Bargaining Agreement funding approval. Both were sponsored by the CAFO, Mr. Ianello, who isn't with us this evening. And I'm going to ask when we get there that we set those two aside for a future date. And we can talk about that as a committee when we get there. With that, I'll go back to the top of the new business agenda, and that is item 11321. In order to expend grant funds for fiscal year 21 Housing Choice Initiative program in the amount of $250,000, Mass Department of Housing and Community Development, and that was brought to us by Vilma Martinez Dominguez, Community Development Director. Are we joined this evening by Ms. Martinez Dominguez or a representative of the Community Development Office?
Good evening, Councilor. My name is Sue Fink. I live at 6 Rockwood Lane in Lawrence, and I will be presenting on Vilma's behalf this evening.
Ms. Fink, thank you for doing so and stepping in. And you've introduced yourself. Now tell us why we're here to talk about this item.
Sure. The Community Development Department, in partnership with the Lawrence Housing Authority and the Lawrence Police Department, submitted an application to the Department of Housing and Community Development for the FY21 Housing Choice Capital Grant and was successfully awarded $250,000, the largest amount of funds a city can receive through this grant program. The Housing Choice Capital Grant Program provides funding for capital projects to communities that have achieved the Housing Choice designation. The city received its first designation in FY18 and most recently renewed its designation in FY20. This competitive Housing Choice Capital Grant Program awards funds based on the project's connection with housing, the municipality's housing production record, and sustainable growth policies that go beyond the housing choice requirements. The purpose of these grant funds is to support the purchase and installation of strong infrastructure equipment, such as servers, etc., and surveillance cameras throughout the city where hotspots for crime and the spread of COVID-19 have been identified along Lawrence Housing Authority's exterior and perimeter. This project enhances residents' quality of life by integrating safety and security practices with new technology. It will prevent crime and provide safer places for residents to live during and post-pandemic. For this grant, the Community Development Department acts as the contract manager and the Lawrence Housing Authority as the program manager. The Lawrence Housing Authority will work closely with the Lawrence Police Department in the installation process in connection with the police department's surveillance camera network. The Lawrence Housing Authority's Executive Director, Efren Roland, and Chief Roy Vask are both here this evening to provide additional information and details about this project and answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fink. Why don't I take them in the order in which you introduced them? And Mr. Roland here as the Executive Director from the Lawrence Housing Authority. Mr. Roland, the floor is yours, sir.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm here to answer any questions that you have on this grant. It's the first of a kind. We're really excited about this collaboration. This project, some of the details on it include creating an infrastructure that involves some complicated construction costs because of the way that we have to approach installing some of the cameras inside the properties that we're going to do so. In particular, this would be the Merrimack Courts, the building at Elm Street, and also 65 Union Street. We're also looking, it's probably around 110, 115 cameras, but that's something that it's somewhat soft because cameras, depending on their ability or capacity, may change in price. The grant, it's for $250,000, but there's also a $27,500 amount that is now part of the grant that will be added to this by the Housing Authority, which helped us throughout the application process to give us a higher score in getting this grant. We are also looking at installing servers that would allow us also the opportunity to expand this moving forward. Mainly right now, we're calling this phase one. It'll be in the north of the city. Another one of the points of interest that worked out with us is that we will, moving forward, add phase 2, 3, and 4 to tap into all the Housing Authority properties through our capital funding that will be amended on a yearly basis to continue to grow and do this. The collaboration with the police department is essential. They're the experts. They're the ones that we call when we see something on video. So once we have your blessing and approval and we can put out the RFP and move forward with the project, Chief Bass, myself will be working on locations. We can identify what would be best for the Housing Authority, what would be best for the police department moving forward. And our goal is in 3 to 4 or 5 years, have the north and the south of the city covered with this type of equipment, which is an amazing tool for prevention of vandalism, illegal dumping, all sorts of crime, and essentially giving a comfort and increasing the security of our residents and not just our residents, the surrounding areas that are around the 14, 15 different sites that we have throughout the city. So we're very excited about this project. And if you have any questions, I will try to answer them for you.
Thank you, Mr. Olan. Are there questions of members before we ask Chief Ask to make a few comments and then we open it up for good? Mr. Rodriguez.
No, I just allow the chief to speak on behalf of the program, and then we can ask questions.
Sounds good. That was my plan, excuse me, not Mr. Chief Ask, sir.
Thank you, Council. I appreciate the opportunity. I think Efren, filled in a lot of details, but basically, as you know, we have a citywide camera project that's been very successful in the city. Certainly integral in our third year of, 20-year historic crime lows. And when something happens in the city, we're able to respond very quickly and, put that sort of situation to rest. I would point to the recent homicide that we had, our only one homicide this year, but within 3 days, the entire 4 individuals responsible for that heinous act were arrested, and the cameras were integral in that case. And also, the 5 Corners, to point out the horrific accident there. Very quickly, the cameras again were very integral in determining who was responsible for that, speed and things of that nature. So the cameras have been a huge success, and I think they come at a great time where the Lawrence Housing Authority is dealing with some older cameras in their facilities, and this grant really comes at a great time where they can start upgrading the system, and it makes perfect sense to integrate those with the Lawrence citywide camera project that we have already, so that we are fully functional, able to take a look at those cameras at any time and help us solve crimes, and obviously secure those 16 different areas that Efren talked about. So it's a great opportunity for the city at no cost, really, to expand the program and secure those areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. With that, I would open the floor to my colleagues, Mr. Rodriguez, Mr. Payano.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Some of the questions that I was going to ask Chief Bags already answered it, which was basically on the line of whether or not this set of cameras were going to be together with the rest of the cameras citywide that we have, and he already responded. Also, I will, and I'm assuming that same rules and regulations that are on the citywide cameras, that's going to be part of this set of cameras, right?
Yes, sir. The same policies and procedures will remain in effect. We'll work with housing on that. But really, the structure will be LHA based, but certainly run by the Lawrence Police Department and its policies that were adapted and worked on with the City Council.
Yeah. Also, so basically, we currently have a room set up for different cameras throughout the city. So this is going to be just an add-on on those already structure that you have at the police department, right?
Yes, that's correct. We'll have the ability to pull up any of the cameras at any time that we need to, depending on what's going on in the city. And also, Efren and housing will have their own sort of base there where they'll be able to monitor their own cameras as well, like they currently do now. So we'll both be able to monitor them based on, our needs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure Councilor Payano is going to touch on that, but I mean, part of the policies that we have, which he's more aware of, because he was helping out a lot with that, was the access of who have access to those cameras and who can download stuff from there. So I'm gonna leave it up to that, and then probably Councilor Payano have some questions on that matter.
So thank you, Mr. Rodriguez, and thank you for the introduction to Mr. Payano, because I'm sure, as most of us know, Mr. Payano is very active and very beneficial to the city and the development of the policies. And it's great to have him on this committee. So I would turn the floor over to you, Mr. Payano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have some questions on that, but before I get there, I'm interested in hearing the the sort of why to the cameras. I think I understand, like, you know, the importance of, you know, having these cameras, but there's 250,000, you know, coming in. Why did we apply for cameras instead of something else? I think those of us that are, you know, are on the city council, we're constantly going to these different housing units and hearing from residents about, you know, small to big issues. And I know that this is infrastructure type of work, and I'm wondering, you know, like, why this became the priority.
It didn't become a priority. Taking care of our units is what we do. Are we perfect at it? Absolutely not. This was an opportunity that we went after on at no cost to the city to increase the ability to provide this type of security to our residents. As everything else that I mentioned before, the idea that we're able to, for example, illegal dumping. We have over 65 dumpsters throughout our properties that we actually pick up the garbage on. And over the last 3 to 5 years, this as an example, we used to go to certain areas and empty a dumpster once a week. We are now emptying the same dumpster 2 to 3 times a week. We assume the cost of picking up our garbage, if you will. The city assumes the cost of the tipping fees. This will be a reduction on that by being able to prevent the type of dumping that is going on rampant throughout the city. So internally for the housing authority, that would be a benefit, and also to the city and its residents. Again, it was just an opportunity, and we were very happy to have been awarded it. And I think moving forward and expanding this system will benefit not just the housing authority, but every resident in the city of Lawrence by allowing the police department to utilize this tool and maximize the effects of it in preventing crime, stopping crime, and resolving crime matters that take place that before we weren't able to do.
Thank you, Director Rolón. So I think I understand, you know, a piece of that. So it sounds like, you know, part of the reason that this is done is related more to illegal dumping. Was this grant?
Sorry, that's wrong.
Oh, that's what I was hearing from you. So if I'm not correct, you can definitely you know, rephrase certain things. But my question was going to be, was this grant a grant that was specific to sort of building up this this type of technology? Was like this grant specific to you know, for like the purchase of video cameras, or was it more was this like a general grant that was applied regarding infrastructure?
So an RFP comes out for $250,000, and one of the qualifying factors of it would be to increase, create, expand a surveillance system. Vilma, who's not present today, and Chief Bass and myself, we've had several conversations about this, and it's a win-win. We just looked at it as an opportunity. I mean, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I'm not sure what.
You might be. So was this, I'm interested in knowing, was this grant, and maybe Ms. Fink can answer this. Was this grant like specific? So the grant that we applied for, is it a grant that was specific towards, you know, I don't know, technology, surveillance technology, or was it just like an overall grant on infrastructure?
It was more about technology, surveillance, and providing security to housing authorities, and this is what we apply. The idea of collaborating with the police department is just a plus. Whenever we have issues that with our system that we've had for probably 20 years now, we've been able to collaborate with the police department to solve crimes. If there's been an incident around our developments and we have cameras that we have been requested to have them pointed to a hotspot by the police department, and assist the police department, if you will, with what we had that is, somewhat outdated. This just increases the opportunity throughout the city because of all the locations that we have to truly be more effective in the way that we can, again, prevent crime, solve crimes, and also provide a comfort of security that was not there before.
Right, Director Rowland. So I completely understand sort of the different benefits that can come with surveillance cameras. What I guess what my line of question is just trying to get more information as to, so for example, somebody comes up to me and says, oh, $250,000 on camera. Why wasn't that money put on XYZ that's going on my building? What I'm hearing from you is that this grant that was applied, so it wasn't necessarily that we applied, that the grant itself was, that folks can apply for any amount dealing with infrastructure. It was that this grant was specifically $250,000 for surveillance cameras, and we happened to apply and have won it. That's what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah, and
I
it
could
was,
add on to that, Counselor.
Yes.
I have the RFP right here in front of me, and it said that the program investments will be targeted to projects that require the infrastructure improvements or expansion to support or facilitate new growth or address safety issues. So the surveillance cameras certainly address safety issues.
Okay, so potentially, so what wasn't exactly like that. Okay. All right. I'll move on from that line of questioning while I sort of think that piece through. And the reason behind it is that I just want to make sure if somebody asks me the question, like I have my own sort of views, whether like my own personal views as far as whether money should be going to one box or another. But if a constituent were to ask me like, hey, I don't know, I can't think of anything right now, but this thing is going on in my building. Why wasn't that money put? Why didn't they apply for that money to be used to fix that infrastructure instead of camera, right? So that's where I was trying to.
well, I can expand on that if you want, Council.
If you could, and listen, and I think Director Rowland, like you spoke a little bit about how cameras might help when it comes to targeting illegal dumping. You spoke how cameras could help the rest of the city, which I think is great, right? So I think it's great points.
Yeah.
But can you speak on how it would be, that would be very helpful for the residents that are currently living in those units,
So
rather
we
than like
may-
infrastructure?
Yeah, so we somewhat agree, maybe, that the purpose of this grant is pretty clear, and surveillance would be a great way to address it. What you're, and correct me if I'm wrong, what you seem to be asking is capital improvements, not so much infrastructure. Over the last 5 years, we probably have over 90% of our boilers that have been replaced. A year ago, we changed the electrical system, which was original to an underground electrical system, which was original to the Beacon Courts. We are right now working on replacing flooring that's been there 35 years. But before I get into some of the other projects that we have, working on infrastructure, if you look at our properties, being the largest landlord in the city, we have to concentrate on mechanical systems to be able to provide heat and hot water. Then we look at windows. Then we just replaced the roof at Elm Street. We just finished replacing the roof at Brunswick, which was 20 years old. We are now looking in the next year or two to replace kitchens and bathrooms that were done 10 years ago. So our capital dollars in terms of capital improvement dollars, in terms of maintaining the properties, we look at what's most important and necessary to be able to provide housing, and then what we can do to even make it better than that. Like the flooring job that we're doing right now at Elm Street. You should come take a look. We're then moving on to 65 Union Street to also do that. Last year, after probably 15 years of asking, we finally got some dollars to be able to replace the floors at Brunswick, which were original. So every year we take a look at our capital improvements. We do have a 5-year plan, but every year we look at what our necessities are and whether they have changed or not, and update what it is that we may need to continue to provide safe and affordable housing to our residents.
Okay, thank you. So, so I guess what I'm hearing is that work is already being done to create meaningful infrastructure changes and updating systems within the housing units, and that the application for this grant is to target these, the safety of the residents of your housing units. So that is understandable, and I think that that makes for a good argument for anyone that were to ask those questions. So my next questions are more specifically on the procedures that we have currently in place regarding, the cameras are in use. Chief, with the current cameras across the city, if I recall, I think within, it's been a couple of years since I reread the policy, but if I remember, the only individuals that have access to the LPD cameras are those officers that are designated for, that particular use. Do others within the city also have access to the city cameras?
Yes, Council. So to your point, there are very limited access depending on, for lack of a better word, your security clearance. As an example, there are only 2 officers total in the entire department that have the ability to download anything to a disk or save anything for future court use, or to give to individuals that ask for them through the proper channels of, as an example, defense attorneys and things of that nature. So it's very limited access depending on what your job assignment is in the police department. Lewis from IT obviously has access as the administrator of the city for all technology. And I believe the mayor has limited access for viewing. But other than that, it's strictly Lawrence police based. So the idea for these cameras dealing with the housing authority would be that they would have limited access to only their cameras. And I think to go back to your original question about the grant and its use, they already have surveillance cameras, but they are 20 years old and they're limited to only their function. We do not have the ability to have direct access to them. So while there is a huge need for them to upgrade their system and expand it, the grant certainly does that for them, and also allows us to tie into their system and obviously, expand what the citywide camera project is that we are currently, undergoing.
So Chief, I would like a document that lists, anyone that's outside of LPD that has access to the camera, who they are and what type of access they have. I will say that I do find it concerning that anyone outside of LPD would have access to these, will have access to viewing any camera when they are not a part of any type of investigatory department. I think an argument could be made that maybe someone in a special service department, maybe, but even that, personally, I think that's having broad access would be that sounds like a lot. I don't think any mayor should, I can't see sort of an argument being made that a mayor or a city councilor should have those types of powers, and I do find that concerning. I know that that's not why we're here today. So if you can send me that information, and I'll follow that along. But with that, it sounds like if these cameras are put in place, that there'll be members of the housing unit of the housing department that will have access to these cameras from what you said. The current policy is in relations to LPD, not the folks from housing. So I think it'd be important to, make sure that we have policies that reflect that within the Director Rolon's department. So I'm just wondering, Director Rolon, like, have you been able to take a look at the policies that LPD put in place for their department?
I have
Sure.
not, but I can tell you, Councilor Payano, that our goal is to adhere to the policies that they have. Our goal is also to have very limited access to this. Perfect example would be the Merrimack courts. We have a manager on in our 4 developments that is there every day and knows what goes on in their department. Outside of police issues, if there are complaints for tenants about a particular unit and there is vandalism taking place and there are issues around the development, I think it behooves us to have one of our managers to have access. I'm not an expert on this, but I believe that we can create different areas where people may have access to. They call them trees or sections, if you will.
You can.
So if we can do that, and I have a manager at the stadium courts, Hancock courts, Merrimack courts, and Beacon courts, who's there every day and are responsible for their development, they should have access to it. But that's something that I will discuss once we move forward, and creating policies that would adhere and enhance what's already there to make it work, not just for the police department, but also internally. I would not want any of my clerks to have access to this. I would not, this is not something that will feel comfortable either. So those are things that will be discussed once we put out the RFP and once we are in the process of implementation to make this work and make it work responsibly and make sure that we protect the rights of our residents at the same time that we're providing them with the comfort of a more secure place to live, because we can address all these issues around them with such technology moving forward.
And thank you for saying that, Dr. Rolon. I think what I would say is, like, yes,
Could I
I definitely think.
Could I comment again?
Sure, Chief. Just let me just add one word. So I think yes, I would say that we should probably be discussing that now. So even like before the like if this were to go through, I think the earlier you have these conversations and try to create those policies, the better. Because that way, because it'd be great if these policies were in place before a camera goes up. I would agree that, like, I think that it's important to be aware of, who has access, and that the access is limited to whatever work use. But it's also important, one of the things that the Lawrence Police Department has is that they do sort of like an annual, I don't know if it's annual, quarterly, but they're supposed to be doing an audit of the individuals that are, checking out use time. Just to make sure that people are using it for the correct reason. I think that cameras, have been important these last few years in ensuring that our city is a safer place. But it's also something that could be, if we don't have not just the proper procedures, but if the proper procedures aren't being followed and being taught to folks using it, it could be a tool to invade the privacy of somebody else. So it sounds like that's something, Director Rolon, that you're willing to look into, and I think that it'd be important for the council to see those policies as well. Chief Vask, I know you wanted to say something as well.
Well, just a couple things. Number one, these are not our cameras, LHA. They already have cameras Who views them, I don't know. And what they do with them currently, I don't know. But, these are not our cameras. Our cameras are covered by a strict policy of who can view them, who can download certain things and things like that. I would envision that really the thing that's changing is that we will have access to their cameras. So our sort of internal policies and who views them and who downloads things will remain in place. We will not change those or add to them. If we're looking to give them limited access to view only, just like they have now, their cameras, because they're going to be their cameras. It's just the thing that's the difference is that they're now integrated with our system, so we have instant viewing. So I don't know what policies they have there, now covering their own cameras, but certainly that can be discussed and or changed or whatever. But to your point, our policies are very strict as to who can do what, and I would envision sort of a view only for whatever limited persons over there for their own reasons, but they would certainly not have access to any other cameras in the city that we currently have. And that would remain in effect. And to your point, we do have an audit system. We can see who's looking at what cameras, who's done what with what cameras. And we also have policies in place where only a certain number of individuals can actually, manipulate cameras, and there's only a few that can, but that's also tied into a very few sort of people. And like I went back to my first statement, there are only 2 people in the entire department of 167 that can actually download any information. So it's a very strict policy. I would imagine we can carry that over into the LHA system as well.
Chief, the cameras, this $250,000, is it for similar type of cameras like the one we have?
Well, I would say we don't know that, because what we are asking for in the RFP and working with Efren is that we want them to be, so we put the RFP out, we can't dictate who wins the bid. However, we are looking for a system that can be integrated into the existing citywide project. So that would be one of the criteria. So whoever wins the bid and whatever company we go with, the idea would be that they're able to, to be added to the system itself now and be of full use to us. It would make no sense. Like right now, currently their system is not integrated with ours. There's a 20-year-old system and it's not able to be viewed by us live. We can go there and look at their system like we would any other business, but that slows the process down. And so we're looking for in this new RFP that the new system that would go out to bid would be one that can be integrated immediately with the existing citywide camera system.
So this grant is not, is just for a system. It's not for the cameras that will be plugged into that system, or it's for both?
It's for both.
For both. So yeah, so I think, Chief, my experience with sort of like local government office across the state is that usually for a lot of these like older cameras, there usually wasn't really any type of in-depth policies that were created just because they were, at that time, probably it wasn't seen as like it would be something that's useful. I think, nowadays the type of cameras that have come out in the past several years, they're a whole lot stronger. They're a whole lot more powerful. And because of that, that's one of the things that why I think a lot of cities have pushed to create strong guidances around them, because they're not just your regular kind of camera that you have on someone's home. Like you can, like zoom in, and I think that it's just the system that, we currently have is a whole lot stronger than what most people have in their home. But so I would say I think it would be important, Director Rolón, to have those policies in place. And it sounds like you guys already have certain guidelines, whether it's written or not. There's some guidelines that are being followed. It's a matter of putting those on paper and making sure that they are aligned with, like they are aligned or similar to the policies within LPD.
I truly believe this is going to be a learning curve. We definitely want to adhere to policies that respect people's rights. We are not putting cameras on people's apartments. These are exterior cameras. It's about monitoring. We don't take action unless it involves us directly based on what we do, which is the enforcement on the lease. We've had cameras for 20 years, and the only time that we share any type of internal information or videos is when we're asked by the police to do it because we're landlords. So yes, I understand your concern or your point of view. Yes, there will be a learning curve, and thank you for bringing that up because I can see where you're going with this. And you're right, and we respect that. As we respect the rights of all citizens. So yeah, we'll definitely be looking into this. As we, again, we first got to get the RFP out. We will be working on our policies, and you know, we are a federally funded organization. We have to abide by every single regulation that involves this type of programs. So everything will be taken into consideration as we move forward.
No, I appreciate that. I think, you know, my hopes and, you know, concern is essentially to ensure that within, you know, a few months, there are some really written policies for us or for anyone in the public that's interested in sort of learning more to kind of look at and have an understanding of its use. I think you've done a great job articulating, you know, sort of like, you know, big picture of the use. It's just now a matter of putting, you know, words to paper and, you know, ensuring that, you know, anyone in the public knows that your department is following these strict guidelines and that folks' privacies, you know, issues are going to be, you know, dealt with, that they don't have nothing to fear. And what this is going to be providing is for a safer community. I will say that when we first started putting the cameras in place within the city, there were a lot of constituents that were very worried about what this might mean. Once we put out those guidelines and they had a chance to go through them, you know, people felt pretty secure, and you know, they trusted LPD that things would be, you know, that you know, essentially that nobody's going to be spying on anybody, right? So us government workers might think like, oh man, like nobody has time to do that, right? But you know,
we're not interested in doing that.
Exactly. So, but you know, that it's a concern that folks might have, and people can envision, you know, someone misusing it, and people have misused across the country. There's been tons of cases where people have misused it. So I understand the fear. So if we're able to put, you know, words to paper that might belay those fears and ensure that we're following proper protocols, I think that will be great. And, you know, Director Rallone, I'll say if I can be of help with that, I think that, you know, my time, I'm available. If I can help with any of that, you'll have a great partner with Chief Vass, because he's already gone through, and I think within him, it's a little bit more intensive in the sense that, you know, these cameras are, you know, sometimes looking at people going into their homes, right? So your cameras are maybe, it's not necessarily that, right? So there's less of.
Our cameras are also not to convict people of crimes that have been committed. We're a housing authority, so but I do hear your issues and your concerns, and it will. We are, again, we're a federal organization. Transparency is not even a question; it's a mandate. This is what we do. So we will definitely be working on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the final questions, Chief, you mentioned the LPD would be able to, would they be able to, so if they're part of the same system, they'll probably be able to manipulate the cameras and also record.
The cameras will be on the, well, again, our hope is that the RFP goes out to and is awarded to an individual company that can do the same that is currently in place, and that's a 30-day window where it records over itself, unless we, like I said, one of two individuals, for whatever reason, court-related, would need a piece of information to download permanently for court action or whatever. But to your point, the same policies and procedures would be in place where the cameras would record on a 30-day cycle and re-record over themselves, and that would be the end of that. That information would be erased, if that's what you're asking, I believe.
Yeah. So I was just wondering, so how well the LPD is able to, potentially, depending on the cameras, it'll be able to zoom in and record.
Okay.
And it sounds like you're saying that they'll at least be able to record, maybe not do like the zoom in or move the cameras around that you can currently do with the cameras put in place.
I think all the cameras record. That's a certainty for 30 days.
Yeah.
And I think most of the cameras are still cameras, and that they're not be able to manipulate. And I think Efren might have a little bit more detail as to, there may be a few cameras in some spots which would be outside of the housing authority that may be able to be zoomed in, if you will, but those are very limited because, quite frankly, they're expensive. But he might have those details.
Yeah, so we're getting into the technicalities of how this is going to work. We're not gonna have cameras in the hallways. If there is any type of an incident in a housing authority, within 24 hours, we're gonna hear about it. It's more like the next day when we get the complaint of whatever situation it is, whether it's a hallway in one of the high rises or somebody crashing into a fence. This gives us the ability to do so. Which type of camera we're going to use once the RFP out, and we have a vendor that is compatible to be able to increase the capacity of the police department, as we have said before. It would just it'll be beneficial all around, but those details, that's more of an internal situation that, with the help of the police department, Chief Bass and his staff, and our knowledge of our properties, that's what we're going to work out. But they may all be different. And it also involves, we want to be able to maximize the utilization of this $250,000. So if we don't need to have a 180-degree camera on a post, that's $5,000, and these are just numbers I'm throwing out there, versus a still camera in an elevator that may be $300. Those are the details that we'll work out moving forward. The utilization of it will be monitoring on our end. The ability to share this information with a higher quality of video and abilities to see what's actually going on. Those are things that involve the placement, location, and strategic location, and anything else that involves where we put a camera. And those details will be worked out with the assistance of Chief Bass and our internal knowledge of our properties.
Thank you, Director Rolón. Thank you, Chief Bass. No further questions.
I have a question.
I'd like to welcome Councilor Levy to the meeting. Councilor Levy, the floor is yours. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Fine.
Mr. President. So what I understand in here is that we are getting $250,000 for surveillance cameras. So how many cameras are you expecting to buy with or to get it?
We are looking over 100 to 120 cameras. And that may depend, because the example that I gave you, a camera in an elevator may be a still camera that could be $300 or $500. A camera in front of a high rise that is 150 feet wide may have to be an 80-degree camera that may be $5,000. These are not the numbers. I'm just throwing numbers out there.
Yeah, no, I understand.
But we spent several weeks. We have been doing this for a while. We have a couple of electricians that are very knowledgeable on video surveillance. We've also been looking at this for several years to, update our infrastructure. So we spent several weeks going through the properties in this particular grant, which is Elm Street, Merrimack Courts, and 65 Elm Street. In thinking about locations, the maximum effect and coverage that we can get in the area that we're trying to secure or have surveillance or monitoring on. And we came up with approximately between 100 to 110 cameras. It may be a little higher, it may be a little less. But right now, once we move forward with this, hopefully with your vote and blessing, and we can put the RFP and we have a compatible, qualified vendor that can provide the service, those are the details that we will work out. So I hope you don't think I'm not giving you a straight number. It's just impossible.
No. That's
out.
understandable.
Yeah,
This is understandable right now because the price can vary.
Yeah.
From one to the other. So yes, I already renewed the camera that I have on my building, and yes.
yeah.
It varies, yes. But my concern here is, so you're gonna put a camera inside the buildings, or you're
Yeah.
going to renew the one that's, or updated the one that you already have in place on those buildings, and also you're gonna put outside camera.
Yeah, so again, it falls back on once we go through the RFP and we have a vendor, you know, we have 8 floors. So we have a camera on each end of the hallway and one in the elevator in the event that there is an issue. We already have the locations for
Okay.
our internal purposes. Of course, we want to keep those there. So it may be a matter of a very inexpensive still camera to do that service.
But
Oh.
this is where I'm going right now.
What?
This is where I'm going right now.
Okay,
So the police will have access to the surveillance of those cameras?
they can have access to all the cameras that they want. But you also need to please understand that we don't have staff monitoring this as they do in Europe with full departments looking at these cameras. Our purpose is to have them have the ability to see any incident or issues that take place
Inside the building.
and then react to it. And if it involves a crime, the police will have, the police doesn't want to see elderlies having an argument on the hallway, but they will want to see an accident that took place that somebody got hurt. But they will have access to any camera. We're working in its compatible system. So it's literally 100% compatible. There is no if or what they can look at. Is when they want to look at it, it'll all be available, which is the beauty of a new system, web-based, that allows us to do that, as well as record for shorter, longer, different times. Does that answer your question?
Yes, a little bit. Okay, so because I have a camera inside my building, okay? Yeah, the police have access to those cameras. When I call them and I just let them know that an incident happened, but they are no monitoring, those cameras.
Are those cameras tied into the city camera
No.
system?
No,
Then that would be completely different, because our cameras will have the ability to literally be part of the same system. That's why this is so great. It gives them the ability to have 100% access to any camera that we have. Do you know what I'm saying? If you have right now we have an independent system,
yes, like this is the one that I have a
That's why you
completely
have-
independent.
which is what you have now, right?
Yes,
If when we go through this process, we'll have pretty much the same, bigger, better, and they'll have 100% access to it. So they won't need to come to our office and say, can you give me a memory stick with the video between 9 and 10 p.m. They can literally sign on to the system and see what happened between 9 and 10 p.m.
are you going? That's my question. So they're going to be watching like the same way that they are being watching 24/7.
No, Counselor, there is no such thing.
Okay.
There is no such thing. maybe in Europe, in England, they have like full buildings and departments of staff people looking at cameras, but this is more reactive. It's more monitoring to incidents and issues that take place. The idea of 24-hour surveillance, the surveillance will be there, but there's no one looking at it 24/7.
Councilor Levy, may I
that's
ask a
what I
question?
said. You're gonna, I'm sorry, Council Payano. So you're gonna call and you're gonna lay that an incident happened on such and such a day, and they're gonna be able from their own side to see it without coming to your place.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's, now you are responding my question, because what I said, they're gonna
Sorry, I thought I
be
was.
in their surveillance, to whatever that is happening every single minute, second over there, the same way that they are watching all of the cameras on the street. So
Yeah.
that is what's my concern regarding all this. So I have to call them, they have to come to my site, they have to look at it, I have to rewind, I have to put it, the USB or whatever for them to see what happened. So now they're gonna have the ability to see it when you call and say that an incident happened, maybe camera number 3, 5, whatever is the number or whatever that you call, or the building how you call. That's the way.
Right. I would also say that that's absolutely correct. So it speeds up the process for us investigating a crime. Also, if you think about if there was an emergency situation that happened in one of the housing authorities, and we had the ability to open up the camera immediately to see, God forbid, a fire or a shooting or something, we'd have instant access to be able to tell our officers and responding personnel what's going on there, which we wouldn't be able to do now. So to Ephraim's point and yours, councilors, as well, is that it's impossible to look at all these cameras all the time, 24 hours a day. It's really about going back afterwards and investigating what happened. And again, trying to take that criminal off the street that did something as a result of the cameras. A small percentage of people do a lot of crime. So if you can arrest them or close that case out very quickly, statistically, it tells you that you're going to stop a lot of other crimes from happening in the future. And this is just another tool to help us do that. But again, it's impossible to live monitor all these cameras. We just don't have enough eyes for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. So another question, do you allow people on the housing authority to have the recording or watching the camera through the cell phone?
Right now, what we have is DVRs that are monitoring the properties. And when there is an incident, because it's a DVR that is centralized, we only have the ability to go to that DVR. And we have around our electrician that, again, has extensive knowledge on video surveillance. We have our deputy director, we have myself, we have, and that's pretty much it. But moving forward, if you're the manager, and you know this more than most, of a particular development with 200 units, 150 units, I want them to have the ability to look at an incident that a tenant complained about. But again, these are exterior cameras that will be looked at upon a reaction of a complaint, of a lease violation, of an incident. Not 24-hour surveillance. Was that?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Council Levy. Thank you, Mr. Rolon. Thank you, Chief. Mr. Payano, I believe you had a question a few moments ago.
Yes, thank you. It was it's just a follow-up to a line of question that Councilor Levy, my colleague, was speaking about. So, and I think it's just this piece is important just to really understand the program. Chief, currently within the system, would your officers be able to have access to these cameras while they're live?
Yes.
Okay. So Director Rolon, so this would be, I'm not saying 24-hour surveillance as in like there's a man looking at each camera, but it will be part of our system, and you should check out the system that they have in LPD. It's a pretty amazing system. I would say it's not probably as strong, not strong isn't the right word, doesn't have all the bells and whistles that some of these like systems in Europe do. no facial
Well, I
recognition.
want to
anything
get
like
one
that,
of
but-
those TVs that Chief Bass has.
Yeah. Oh no, you'll need like 10 or 12 because there's a lot of TVs. But so even though within your I think it's just important to note this. Not that it changes the discussion on policies or anything else, but I think while within your office you would only be seeing it, or like no one, like usual practice is for someone to go essentially when an issue comes up. Currently all the cameras that we have within the city, there are currently officers, like it's all sort of live. I'm sure most of the work is, most of the use of the camera is done after an event occurs, all while an event is in action. But they will be live. And if
Not only would they be live, the data will be saved in a system. And I think sometimes we move away a little bit from the subject matter here, which is, this is an opportunity to increase the level of security, surveillance, preventive measures for all the residents, or not just the housing authority, the surrounding areas, which is it's a huge part of the city.
and I'll say
that.
And I'll say, Dr. Rolón, I don't think that we've moved past that. I think this council completely understands that. We've put in like over 300 for probably close to $500,000, maybe more, in money when it comes to putting surveillance cameras across the city. So we completely understand how this could protect the safety of our community. I think our line of questioning is more trying to get more specifics about the program itself, the why to the program, what it entails, just all those questions that I think,
I think we try to answer that.
Yeah, and so far I think you have, but essentially saying that we're not getting away from the main task at hand.
Well,
I think if we were, Chair Abdu would, lay down the hammer and make sure we got to business. But I think I have a fair understanding of the program. Just one quick question for you, Director Rolón. How long do you think it would take for you to come up with these policies? Just as an FYI, current ordinances say that anytime that we come up with new technology,
yeah,
there's new technology when it comes to the use of surveillance cameras. There's an ordinance that it applies it, and one of the things that it asks for are policies. How long do you think it would take to come up with that? Like 3 months, more?
Well, no pun intended, and I'm going to sound political. I don't know. This is a learning curve for us. We're not looking to write the book. We're looking to adhere and learn from what the city already has in place, with the assistance of the chief we're going to be working together on this. I don't have an answer. I do have a timeline for the program, which probably want to be able to finish and complete this by 2022. Well, March of 2022. But I really don't have an answer for you.
So I will say, Director Rolón.
I'm happy to comment.
Sure. Go ahead, Chief. I'll say my comment after.
Council, I would just say that, as you know, you were very, involved in the last process, along with Councilor Rodriguez, and actually all of you, really, Councilor Levy and Councilor Abdu. We want to put together something that you're all very comfortable with. As you know, we went through a long process involving the ACLU and people like that to advise us on policy and procedure, and we will put together something very quickly. We're working with Efren and the Housing Authority that will alleviate everyone's fears, or that everybody's comfortable with. We want certainly nothing to hide in terms of this technology. It's going to be, basically we have a policy and procedure written right now that's very thorough, I think, and that we'll just use that as a guide to incorporate LHA, and I'll work with them to evolve that into a written document that I think that we can go back and forth on, that everybody will be happy with, and that well before any camera lands on LHA property, we'll be able to put a policy and procedure in place that we're all comfortable with.
Chief, thank you for that. That's exactly sort of definitely what I wanted to hear, because I think that you and your department did a majority of the work a few years ago, and I think that the pieces are there for us to essentially any department can take what you did and model their policies to that. So I would hope that before we put cameras in place, that there's a policy there as well. So thank you for that. No further questions, Chair Abdu.
Thank you, Councilor Payano. Thank you, Chief and Director Rowland, for your responses. Are there further questions or comments with respect to 11321?
I would like to make a motion to send this item with a fair recommendation pending the starting up of the policies that Councilor Payano is asking.
Second.
There is a motion to send this to the full council with a favorable recommendation with the condition of policy development. And it's been properly seconded by Mr. Payano. Discussion. Hearing no discussion, Ms. Halloran, if you would, please take the roll.
A roll call for document 11321. Councilor Giovanni Rodriguez,
Yes.
Councilor Pavel Payano,
Yes.
Councilor Anna Levy,
Yes.
and Chairman David Abdu.
Yes, it is unanimous. It's going to the full council with a favorable recommendation with the condition of policy development.
Thank you, councils.
Thank you, councilors.
Thank you,
Chief.
Councilor.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Ms. Fink, and everyone that supported that conversation.
Thanks.
The next item will be item number 11721, request to adjust funding allocation, community development block grant, CDBG for FY '22, increase from 1,685,904 to 1,710,748, as submitted by Vilma Martinez Dominguez. And I see Ms. Fink is still with us. Will still represent community development. I turn it over to you, Ms. Fink.
Thank you, Counselor. On May 17th, we received an email from HUD notifying us that they discovered an error in the formula when they were determining the annual CDBG allocations across the country. This has resulted in us receiving additional $24,844 of CDBG funds. We are proposing to increase two line items in the annual action budget that you approved on May 4th, 2021. 20% of this additional funding can be used towards administration, and that is $4,968. So that brings the total for administration to $342,149. The remaining $19,876 will be added to the park and infrastructure improvement line items, bringing that budget to $619,876. And I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Fink. Questions of colleagues? I have none. Are there any motions at this time?
Motion to send it to the full council with a fair recommendation.
Second.
There's been a motion by Mr. Rodriguez. It's been properly seconded by Mr. Payano. Is there discussion?
Just to clarify, the total amount is going to be 24,000 and change, right?
$84,844 in total.
Yes. That was, I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Again, the motion is to send up with a favorable recommendation. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I would ask Ms. Halloran to please take a roll.
A roll call for document 11721. Councilor Pavel Payano,
Yes.
Councilor Giovanni Rodriguez,
Yes.
Councilor Anna Levy,
Yes.
and Chairman David Abdu.
Yes, it is unanimous favorable recommendation to the full council.
Mr. Mr. Chairman, do you know what the date of the city council meeting will be for this?
I believe it is Tuesday, July 6th.
Six.
It should be Tuesday, July 6th. That is the first weekend.
Thank you, councilors.
Thank you, Ms. Fink. I appreciate you standing in this evening for Ms. Martinez Dominguez.
My pleasure.
The next item on the agenda is item number 11821, order to expend grant funds, Greater Lawrence Summer Program in the amount of $5,000. And it is submitted by Cassandra Abu Farah, Library Assistant Director. Ms. Abu Farah has come on
Miss-
screen.
Mr. Chair, since I'm part of the summer fund and we gave this grant, I have to recuse myself for this motion.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Payano. Ms. Halloran, please let the record reflect that Mr. Payano has recused himself for the entirety of 11821.
Yes.
With
Make
that,
note of
we'll turn it over to Ms. Abu Farah, our Assistant Director at the library. Ask her to introduce herself for the record and tell us why we're here this evening.
Thank you. Good evening, counselors. My name is Cassandra Abu Farah, the Assistant Director at the Lawrence Public Library. Want to discuss this grant in particular. It is funded by the Essex County Community Foundation. We've applied to this grant as long as I've remembered, as long as I've been at the library, and this grant will assist us with funding our summer programming for the next 2 months. Our summer programming is set to start next week on the 28th, and programs are going to be virtual, hybrid, and we're also looking forward to bringing a Books on Bike program to get into the community and have your fellow librarians that you would see in the building or around the building get deeper connected with the patrons in our community.
Thank you, Ms. Abu Farah. Are there questions of my remaining colleagues? Are there any motions?
Motion to send it to the full council with a fair recommendation.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez.
Second,
And it's been properly seconded. This motion by Mr. Rodriguez, it's been seconded by Ms. Levy to send to the full council with a favorable recommendation. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Ms. Halloran, if you would please take the roll.
Sure. Roll call for document 11821. Councilor Anna Levy,
yes.
Councilor Giovanni Rodriguez. Councilor Giovanni Rodriguez,
Yes.
Chairman David Abdu,
Yes, and let the record
And-
reflect that Mr. Payano did recuse himself and did not vote. And it passes unanimous, 3 in the positive, 0 in the negative, and 1 recusal. Give Mr.
Thank you,
Payano-
counselors.
Oh, you're welcome, Ms. Abu Farah. Thank you so much for coming back. We have you every meeting, it seems. We're always saying yes to money, so keep it up.
Oh, definitely. You will not stop being us. Have a good one, counselors.
You too. So this brings us to item number 11921 and 12021. At the top of the meeting, I alluded to the fact that there had been a loss. Mr. Ianello, Mark Ianello, lost both of his parents last week. And I know I speak on all of our behalf when I send our condolences to Mr. Ianello on an unimaginable loss of both parents in a matter of days. So our best goes out to him. And obviously we don't have him tonight for very good reasons. And these 2 items are his. We do have Ms. Ramona Sabalos with us this evening. She is not the best person to answer questions. She'll give it. We've spoken a few times today. She's more than willing to do what she can, but to do it justice, my recommendation is that we wait for Mr. Ianello. I don't think the 5-year forecast would necessarily be any worse in 2 or 3 weeks. Mr. Ballo, correct me if I'm wrong, on 1/20/21, the SEIU Local 888 Carpenters and Trades Union Collective Bargaining Agreement. This is an approval of the funding, not the collective bargaining agreement, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. And I do not believe, my understanding is there would not be any adverse effect if this were 2 weeks from now.
I'd like to make a motion to table.
Second,
Okay, Mr. Payano, is that both 119 and 120?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. So there's been a motion by Mr. Payano. It's been seconded properly by Ms. Levy to table items 119/21 and 120/21. Is there discussion?
No discussion on the table, but I have a question. I mean,
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point. Let's call that point.
So I'll rescind my motion to table.
Thank you, Mr. Payano. It has been, the motion's been withdrawn. Mr. Rodriguez, I acknowledge your question.
yes, thank you. I have a question on the money portion of the collective bargaining agreement that we have in front of us. So essentially, we have a contract that is in front of us, but it's not signed. So just to avoid any possible delay on the next meeting, please pass the word over that we need an agreement that is being signed by the union and by the mayor before we approve the money portion of it.
Okay, will do.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Mr. Balos. I would also note that it is my colleague's prerogative here this evening that should we table it or should we just leave it, that it is your prerogative to make it next Tuesday, if you would, Mr. Rodriguez, at the next meeting of the city council to pull it up and have it debated, discussed, and possibly voted upon at the next council meeting, which I would assume Mr. Ianello would probably be back and available to us. Mr. Rodriguez.
Through you, Mr. Chair, at least on the collective bargaining agreement, it looked like it's a straightforward. It's a 3-year agreement, 1.5% each year. And I basically the question that I will have is mostly like the amount of people that are part of this collective agreement, bargaining agreement, and from the city perspective.
I can answer that, Councilor.
Very good, Ms. Wallace.
So there are 7 employees currently in this union.
Okay. And so I see that you changed from 1 personal day to 3.5 personal days. That was part of the agreement. On the page 4, the last paragraph.
While she looks, I would just remind colleagues that, in fairness to her, Mr. Ianello is more familiar with the.
Yeah, I know. It's a simple question. That's all I can see here. As the difference between basically most of the stuff stay the same.
Yes, there is a contra synopsis that has a few bullets of the things that they changed, and it talks about the personal days, the sick leave, and like you mentioned before, the cost of living increases for each year to 1.5%. It's pretty straightforward.
It's up to you, councilors. I think that if you okay, I was muted. I think that if we wait for 2 more weeks, probably those 7 employees might not take advantage of the benefit of this contract. I'm pretty sure that they've been waiting for a long time for this contract to be at least discussed. I'm comfortable sending this with no recommendation until we have our CAFA back, and then probably may be able to discuss it at the full council level. And that way we can save a few weeks for those employees.
All right, so I believe I heard a motion by Mr. Rodriguez to.
I
submit-
mean, if the rest of the councilors would like to, I mean, I make a motion, otherwise we wait here. I mean, but I would like to hear from them just before I put the motion.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Payano.
So it's my view that if we're presenting, essentially if any union contract, like, I think, our committee has a job that's outlined in our ordinances. I think it's important for us to, to do that. I think it makes sense for us to sort of slowing this down a little bit and allowing, Ms. Ceballos to essentially get a better understanding of both of these motions. And I understand from Councilor Rodriguez's perspective that it might not be a motion, and the contract might not be, there might not be any significant changes on that. But I think it would be important for us to have those conversations. And it doesn't, from what I'm hearing, it does not sound like there's a week might completely throw off might completely throw off these 8 employees or anybody else that's interested and that's involved in this process. So I think that we should have a conversation in this committee, and we should have it at some other time, whenever that other time might be. I think that those, whether it's next week or in a few days or whenever, I'm sure that members of this committee would make themselves available for that.
Thank you, Mr. Payano. Any further dialogue on 1/2021? I'm going to go back to 1/19. 1/2021. Is there any further dialogue or motions on 1/2021?
So I'll just to see where it lands. I'll make another motion to table those items.
There's a motion by Mr. Payano to table both 1/19/21 and 1/2021. Is there a second? I believe I see Council Levy.
Yes. Yes, I second before, yes.
Thank you, Council Levy. It has been properly seconded. Ms. Halloran, if you would, please take the roll, which the motion by Council Payano and seconded by Council Levy is to table items 1/19 and 1/20/21.
Okay, roll call for documents 1/19/21 and 1/20/21 that was tabled. Councilor Anna Levy,
Yes.
Councilor Pavel Payano. Councilor
Yes.
Payano,
Yes.
Councilor Giovanni Rodriguez,
Yes.
Chairman David Abdu.
Yes, both items are tabled until the next meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee or at whatever time they are entertained. With that concludes the new items on the agenda. Are there any tabled matters that any member would like to discuss? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
There is a motion by Council Payano. It's been properly seconded by, I believe, both Councilors Rodriguez and Levy. And Ms. Halloran, if you would.
Okay, roll call to adjourn at 8:26. Councilor Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Councilor Pavel Payano,
Yes.
Councilor Anna Levy,
Yes.
and Chairman David Abdu.
Yes, the Budget and Finance Committee stands adjourned for the evening of Monday, June 21st. I would note for those at home that there is a special meeting of the full council tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. And that is to entertain the mayor's proposed FY22 budget, which has been discussed by this committee and has been sent to the full council for its vote and consideration. So that is 7 p.m. tomorrow evening.
Councilor Abdu,
Mr. Chair,
quick question.
Go ahead, Mr. Rodriguez.
is it going to be remote or is it going to be in person?
Thank you for that. Thank you for the prompt. It is, my understanding is it's in person as advertised. I could stand correct. That's just this one counselor's understanding, as that it is in person. My further understanding is it was advertised as such before the legislature passed Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. So with that, we are already adjourned. Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez, for that. And wish you all well. See you tomorrow night.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.